Imagine you're floating in warm, murky water and something massive brushes past your leg. Your brain freezes before your body does. The surface ripples, the world goes quiet, and then a shadow, longer than a school bus, glides just beneath you. You can't see its full shape, only the outline. Impossibly large, impossibly calm. Teeth the size of your hand snap shut somewhere in the darkness. Not in panic, almost in curiosity. Most people think they know the ocean's monsters. Sharks, giant squids, maybe orca as well. Yet none of those compare to the strange beings still living down there. These creatures are so bizarre that they seem fictional until you realize they have survived millions of years without ever needing our approval or our understanding. Welcome to the prehistoric ocean, where everything that could grow big did grow big. To understand prehistoric ocean horror, we need to start with the creepiest period of them all, the Ordovician. This is when the ocean basically said, you know what, let's make everything weird and huge. And the poster child for this era is absolutely Cameroceras. Picture this, a squid. But instead of being squishy and normal, it decided to strap a 30-foot straight shell to its body like some kind of organic battering ram. These things were the length of a telephone pole, drifting through ancient seas like living spears. But here's what makes them genuinely unsettling. They were hunted by ambush. That massive shell, it wasn't just for show. Cameroceras could control its buoyancy by filling chambers in that shell with gas or water, letting it hover motionless in the water column like some kind of organic submarine. You wouldn't see it coming. 1 second, you're just a normal Ordovician fish minding your own business, and the next second, 30 feet of shell and tentacles is already wrapped around you. And unlike modern squids that might let you go if you fight back, Cameroceras had a beak strong enough to crack through the hardest shells of its time. There was no escape once it grabbed you. Now you might be thinking, okay, but that's just one weird creature from one weird time period. Wrong. The ocean kept making giants, and it kept making them creepier. After the orthocones started declining, something even more disturbing took over. Dunkleosteus, the largest scorpion to ever exist. Let that sink in for a second. Scorpions in the water, 8 feet long, modern scorpions are already pretty creepy with their claws and stingers. Now imagine one that's taller than you, swimming toward you in cloudy Silurian water. Dunkleosteus had compound eyes the size of baseballs, meaning it could see you coming from multiple angles in low-light conditions. Its claws weren't just for grabbing either. They were serrated, designed to tear through the armored fish that were evolving at the time. And here's the really unsettling part. These things could walk on land. Not well, and not for long, but fossil trackways show that eurypterids could haul themselves onto beaches. Nothing was safe, not even the shoreline. But the ocean wasn't done evolving nightmare fuel, not even close. Because next came the Devonian period, and this is where things got absolutely unhinged. This era is called the Age of Fishes, which sounds pretty innocent until you realize what kind of fish we're talking about. Enter Dunkleosteus, and honestly, calling this thing a fish feels like an insult to normal fish. This was a 30-foot armored tank with a face made of blade-shaped bone plates instead of teeth. Its jaw could snap shut with 8,000 pounds of force per square inch, which is stronger than a crocodile, stronger than a great white shark, and strong enough to bite through a car door. But here's what makes Dunkleosteus truly horrifying. It couldn't chew. Its jaws were basically giant guillotine blades that would slice prey into chunks small enough to swallow whole. Fossil evidence shows that Dunkleosteus would sometimes regurgitate bones and armor plating after eating, kind of like an owl coughing up pellets. Except these pellets were full of the shattered remains of other armored fish. And since Dunkleosteus fossils have been found with bite marks from other Dunkleosteus, we know these things were eating each other too. The ocean had become so competitive that the apex predators were literally their own biggest threat. The Devonian wasn't just about Dunkleosteus either. This period saw an explosion of bizarre predatory fish that would give anyone nightmares. There were sharks with spiral tooth whorls in their mouths that looked like circular saws. There were fish with bony clubs on their heads used for ramming prey. The entire ocean had essentially turned into an experimental weapons facility, with evolution testing out every possible design for maximum predation. And the weirdest part, most of these designs actually worked. They weren't failed experiments. They were genuinely successful predators that dominated their ecosystems for millions of years before eventually going extinct or evolving into something else entirely. Now let's address the real question. Why were these creatures so massive and so nightmare-inducing? You'd think it was about oxygen levels or warm temperatures, but that's not really the full story. The real answer is way more disturbing. They were big because they had to be. Prehistoric oceans were essentially one giant evolutionary arms race where the only way to survive was to outsize everything else. If you weren't the biggest thing in the water, you were food. And unlike land animals, marine creatures had a massive advantage: buoyancy. Water holds up your weight, meaning you can grow to absolutely ridiculous sizes without your skeleton collapsing. A 30-foot Dunkleosteus could cruise through the ocean just fine. But if you tried to make a 30-foot land predator with the same body plan, it would just collapse under its own weight. The ocean removed the size limit, and evolution immediately took advantage. But here's where it gets even creepier. These weren't isolated incidents. The ocean kept producing giants across multiple extinction events and millions of years. Fast forward to the Mesozoic era, and suddenly the oceans are filled with marine reptiles that make Dunkleosteus look friendly. We're talking about mosasaurs, pliosaurs, and other predators that were basically underwater dragons. Take Mosasaurus, for example. This thing was 50 feet of pure reptilian rage, with rows of teeth pointing backward so prey couldn't escape once bitten. But the creepy part? Mosasaurs had double-hinged jaws, like modern snakes, meaning they could unhinge their mouth and swallow prey bigger than their own head. Imagine swimming in Cretaceous seas and watching a mosasaur's jaw literally dislocate as it opens wider and wider to swallow you whole. And based on stomach content fossils, mosasaurs ate everything: fish, sharks, smaller mosasaurs, even flying reptiles that got too close to the water. And let's talk about Cameroceras for a second. This pliosaur had a skull 9 feet long. That's longer than most people are tall. Its teeth were foot-long railroad spikes designed to pierce through bone and flesh. And unlike mosasaurs that needed to unhinge their jaws, Cameroceras just bit straight through whatever it wanted to eat. Fossil evidence shows bite marks on other marine reptile bones that match Cameroceras' teeth perfectly. These things were hunting and eating animals that were already massive. But here's the really unsettling part about Mesozoic marine reptiles. They were smart, like genuinely intelligent hunters. Modern reptiles, like crocodiles, already show complex hunting behaviors, but mosasaurs and pliosaurs had significantly larger brain-to-body ratios. They could plan ambushes, work in coordinated groups, and adapt their hunting strategies. You weren't just dealing with a big dumb animal. You were dealing with a 50-foot intelligent predator that could remember you, track you, and hunt you strategically. Now let's address why these creatures were so much creepier than modern ocean predators. Great white sharks are scary, sure. Orcas are apex predators that hunt with terrifying efficiency. But neither of them are truly creepy in the same way prehistoric creatures were. And there's a specific reason for that. Familiarity. We've grown up seeing sharks and whales. We understand them. We've studied them. They're predictable. Prehistoric ocean creatures were not predictable. Dunkleosteus looked like someone welded armor plates onto a fish's face and called it a day. Cameroceras was a squid that decided shells were cooler than flexibility. Mosasaurs were lizards that said, "Forget legs," and just became underwater serpents with dragon heads. Nothing about these animals makes sense to our modern understanding of how ocean life should work. They're alien, they're wrong, and that's what makes them creepy. But there's another factor that made prehistoric oceans genuinely terrifying: visibility. Modern oceans, especially in areas with lots of predators, tend to be relatively clear. You can see a great white coming from a decent distance. But prehistoric oceans, especially during the Devonian and Carboniferous periods, were often murky, full of sediment, and had way less light penetration. You'd be swimming in greenish-brown water where you could barely see 10 feet in front of you. And somewhere in that murk, there's a 30-foot armoured fish with guillotine jaws that can smell blood from a mile away. Even worse, many of these predators were ambush hunters. They didn't chase you down like modern sharks. They waited, motionless, camouflaged against the seafloor, or hovering in the water column using buoyancy control. By the time you saw them, they were already striking. No warning, no chance to escape, just instant predation. And let's not forget the sheer size disparity. Modern ocean predators are big, but they're not accidentally swallow you whole big. Mosasaurs and Cameroceras were powerful enough to devour prey the size of a grown sea turtle, taking it in as effortlessly as today's apex predators inhale smaller fish. You weren't just in danger of being bitten or attacked. You were in danger of being completely consumed, armor and all. The sheer diversity of nightmare designs is what really sets prehistoric oceans apart. It wasn't just one type of predator that got huge and creepy. It was everything. Ammonites grew shells the size of truck tires. Ancient sharks like Helicoprion had tooth whorls that looked like they belonged in a horror movie. The entire lower jaw held a spiral of teeth that acted like a rotating blade, slicing prey as it curled inward and pulling it deeper with every turn. Even the prey animals got massive and weird, developing elaborate defensive armor that made them look like swimming medieval fortresses. The entire ecosystem was locked in a constant escalation where every adaptation led to a counter-adaptation, and every counter-adaptation led to something even more extreme. So why don't we have creatures like this anymore? Well, the obvious answer is extinction events. The asteroid that killed the dinosaurs also wiped out mosasaurs, pliosaurs, and most other marine reptile giants. But even if they survived, modern oceans wouldn't support them the same way. Today's oceans are colder, less productive, and dominated by warm-blooded predators like whales and dolphins that are simply more efficient hunters. But some descendants are still with us. Leatherback sea turtles can weigh over 2,000 pounds. Giant squids grow over 40 feet long. And blue whales, the largest animals to ever exist, are still cruising through our oceans right now. The difference? These giants aren't creepy. They're majestic, well-studied, and most importantly, they don't want to eat us. Prehistoric ocean giants were huge because they had to be. They were creepy because they evolved in ways that don't make sense to us. And they were terrifying because they dominated ecosystems in ways that modern predators simply don't. The ocean isn't as scary as it used to be, and honestly, that's probably a good thing. So the next time someone tells you the ocean is scary, remind them it used to be way worse. We live in an era where the most terrifying thing in the water is relatively tame compared to guillotine-jawed fish and 50-foot reptilian dragons. Prehistoric oceans were nature's horror show, and we missed the entire terrifying performance. But maybe that's for the best. Because if mosasaurs and Dunkleosteus were still around today, beach vacations would be a lot less relaxing and a lot more life-threatening. The modern ocean is peaceful compared to what came before, and honestly, that's something worth appreciating.